Mr. Metancor, desde Hollywood. Mr. Reeves, congratulations for your amazing body of work since you were announced as the director of this film. I always said, in Matt Reeves, I trust. Matt Reeves, I trust.
Wow, thanks so much.
And I think you're a fantastic filmmaker. Congratulations for this film. When it comes to Batman, I love the fact that we are seeing him making mistakes and trying to become a hero and debating the price you had to pay to become a hero and the difference between a vigilante and a villain. Where does he stand right now in his career, let's say, in terms of his code? For example,
at the beginning of the story?
Yes.
Yeah. I think that intellectually, he believes he's doing this for the city. But it's early days enough that I think, to be Batman and to mask yourself, to become a vigilante, to take the law in your own hands is not a completely sane thing to do on the one hand, and I think what I wanted to do was explore a Batman who is not yet in control of that stuff. Somebody who was on an arc toward becoming a hero, but that was a character who was driven very much more than he knew even by personal animus. He goes out every night. He's kind of like addicted to it. It's like a drug. He's compelled to revisit the violence of his childhood every night, and everyone that he faces out there, he's looking for a fight. So there's something about that I think means that he's got a lot to learn, and the story's meant to be an awakening for him. But he absolutely has a code, but I think that how close he comes to crossing his own code is startling at times. You go like, oh wow, what really separates him from the Riddler? And it's that the Riddler doesn't seem to have any question about the lines he's willing to cross. He'll cross them, but he's also an agent of vengeance, right? And he makes no qualms about it. And I think that the idea of how similar, to a degree, the source of the energy that Batman is using is to what the Riddler's is unsettling to him, and I think he's trying to push it away. I think he wants to be in denial of that, but in a way the story's meant to force him to confront it so that he can have an awakening and change and move toward what you're talking about, which is to come closer and closer to that sense of what it means to be a hero.
Talking about the Riddler, what would you say is the main difference between him and versions of Joker that we have seen in the past and your ideal version of Joker? What different threat or challenge presents to Batman at this point?
Sure. I think for me, I was inspired by The Long Halloween by Jeff Loeb and Tim Sale, which was a serial killer story. And I thought, if I want to do the world's greatest detective version of Batman, which I felt like, hadn't really been the subject of a movie, that this serial killer story seemed like a great way to do it. And the idea sort of came about of how these clues and correspondence could be left and addressed to the Batman. And that idea would be very unsettling to a vigilante whose real power was in his anonymity. He didn't want anyone to know who he was, right? That's part of why he's cowled. And so it would be unsettling to him that the killer would be leaving these messages. And that made me think about a real life killer who actually did that, the Zodiac, and how he left messages for the police to taunt them. He sent messages to the newspapers, and he left ciphers. And when I thought of ciphers and puzzles, then immediately I was like, well, that sounds like a very scary version of the Riddler. And so that's kind of how that idea came about, and how then I started thinking, okay, well, if the idea of these murders is to reveal the truth behind these people as being fraudulent, the idea that these are supposed pillars of the government, and he's taking them down one by one and exposing them as being corrupt and fraudulent, not what they said they were supposed to be. And I thought, well, why would he do this? And I felt that it had to be personal for him too, and that someone who might be like the Riddler, who would retreat into puzzles and patterns, probably was doing that the same reason that Batman's doing what he's doing, which is to cope with trauma. So I thought, oh, well, this will be a personal history for the Riddler, and we'll learn it bit by bit as he's revealing the personal history of the city, and actually what ends up being connecting to Batman's personal history and the Waynes. And so in that way, I thought we'd have a personally driven, numbers, patterns-oriented, riddle-oriented person who is really trying to sort of soothe himself with those things. Because for me, like when I think of like making movies as a kid, I made 8mm movies, and I know the reason I did it was because as a kid you feel so powerless, and the moment that you can kind of take two pieces of film together and you can tell someone to stand over there and film them, you start feeling like you're getting a little bit of agency, a little bit of power. And I think that somebody who retreats into numbers and puzzles probably doesn't feel very powerful in their normal life, and that this is a place where they can become powerful. And I think in that way, you know, as it is in the comics, he's inspired by Batman. And so in that way, he is kind of responding to Batman, and they're in this dialogue. And so in that way, I think he's very different from the Joker, who is a much more expansive kind of character, and in that sense, probably more physically fearless than, you know, he's so nihilistic, you know, what happens to him almost doesn't matter, it only proves the point. Like in the Killing Joke, of course, his greatest desire would be to get Batman to kill him just to prove the point. And so in that way, he doesn't have that fear. And I don't think that the Riddler would share that. The Riddler seems like he would be coming from a place of a kind of physical vulnerability, but it's his mental power that matters so much. And I think that that is where his strength comes from.
Amazing. Thank you so much for your time. Congratulations. Looking forward to seeing more
pleasure.
of your Batman 8 movies and any film that you want to make in the future. Thank you so much.
Cool, man. Thanks so much. I really appreciate it.